The thing about my generation and your generation is that it's very difficult to generalize. There are rich older people. There are loads of older people who are not at all rich and who depend upon their pensions and also the assets in their homes to look after them in older age, because it can be very, very expensive to be looked after. I mean, I recently opened a lovely local nursing home for people with dementia, but I was told that it would cost 90,000 a year to be looked after there. That's a heck of a lot of money. And the last thing I want to do is to cause my children anxiety. My mum, bless her heart, had enough savings to look after herself until she died. I want my children, and I have occasionally, I don't want to humiliate them by saying so, but occasionally been part of the bank of mum and dad myself, but I want them to be confident that the asset that you can see here in my country cottage will, in the end, pay for my care if I need it.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually, because it's interesting. Like, there's a big debate going on whether increasing national insurance was the right way to go about affording social care, given that people who probably demand the most social care are those in the ageing population, and that they're not paying into this. And by and large, you know, even the sort of lowest paid pay national insurance, people who might really struggle to get on the housing ladder are essentially going to be paying a tax to try and prevent a situation where somebody with an asset like a house has to sell it to afford care. Do you think that's the right way of going about things, or do you think actually those, you know, boomers might have to suck it up and realise that their houses might need to be cashed in to make sure they have dignity in their older age?
I think they already know that. I mean, I think you're only entitled to free care if you have assets below a certain threshold. And I think having a cottage like this means that I would have to pay for myself. And actually, I think rightly, because I don't think I have a God-given right to pass on this cottage to my children without ever having to pay a penny for my care. But, you know, life gets quite tough as you get older. They say old age is not for wimps, or as Betty Davis said, not for sissies. And I have a friend who is literally imprisoned in her home, imprisoned by agoraphobia because she can't get out and about. And since November 2018, she has had 72 different carers. She never knows quite when they're going to arrive. They help her first thing in the morning. They help her last thing at night. Their visits last 10 minutes, and she's completely isolated. And I don't think we want that for our older people. I don't think we want an older generation that suffers from poverty of whatever kind, fuel poverty, having to choose between heating and eating, or having to live in appalling circumstances because they can't afford to be looked after properly.
Do you think we actually live in a society now in the 21st century where old people are sort of thrown onto the scrap heap a little bit or become invisible, and that perhaps as a culture we should be looking at families trying to bring their parents as they get elderly back into the family home? Or do you think that actually enough has changed in the 21st century and old people should have the dignity of being able to live alone?
Well, there are different circumstances that suit different families. I sometimes try and visualize what would happen if my mother came to live with my late husband and me, and I think there would be warfare quite soon because they were both quite positive temperaments, and I'm not sure they would have lived happily under the same roof. So I do think the ability to be able to hang on to your independence is important, but I also think that working on into older age, if you have your strength and your health, is a really good thing. When you were looking at COP26, I was really interested to see references to Sir David Attenborough, who is not in the first flush of youth, to Joe Biden, who is not a teenager. Sadly, the Queen can't be there, but we know she's working on and is quite determined to work on. So I think we need to think of our older people as a resource and to use them. I do know from my own experience that in the voluntary sector, in charities, all these major charities would fall to bits if there weren't older people funding them, working for them, delivering the service. something like 60% of childline counsellors are over 65.
And do you think relations between the generations have deteriorated? I mean, there are phrases today like "okay, boomer." Do you think that sort of language is acceptable? Do you think there is a tension now between grandparents, parents and children that didn't used to exist? Or is this just something that happens every era, that older folk look at younger people and, you know, are up in arms about their trends and their habits, and the reverse is true?
I think Socrates grumbled about the behaviour of young people. I think there is a thing that happens to you as you get older when you look with wonder at the people who are young and wonder quite why they do the things they do. Certainly watching Love Island, I must say, that strikes me. I don't watch it a lot. But I do think it's unhelpful to build the generation gap into a brick wall, because we do need each other and we do get on rather well normally. And certainly I find life with my children and my grandchildren is where my real happiness lies. So I'm hoping that we will continue to get a great deal of pleasure out of each other's existence and continue to help each other, because we need each other.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.